Hello, this is just a quick tutorial on how to classify rational numbers. Before we do that, let's look into what it is. It's part of a subset of a larger number system called real numbers, along with whole numbers, integers as well. This is how it is displayed. Again, do not worry about irrational numbers. You'll learn about that at a later date. But we do need to know what's a rational number, what's an integer, and what's a whole number. Whole numbers are basically just counting numbers, including zero. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and we can continue going at that same manner. Integers are a set of whole numbers and its opposites, which we already know. If it's a positive 5, the opposite is a negative 5. See the examples below as well. Rational numbers are just numbers that can take a form either in a decimal or a fraction form. It can be expressed with terminating decimals, repeating decimals, etc. Before we go into some practice, these are some things that you should know. Let's take a closer look on how to classify rational numbers on a Venn diagram. So, because my whole numbers are nestled or embedded inside of my integers and my rational, that means a whole number can also be an integer and it can also be a rational. If we look at my second bullet point, then we see that if the integer is also a rational number, it can also be a rational. Again, going outside the circle. But if we think about this, can a rational number be a whole number? No, because that would be going back inside the circle. Whole numbers, integers are embedded inside of my rational. So we're always going on the outside of the circle, not coming inward of the circle. Lastly, one thing we need to look out is for fractions. So if we divide a fraction and it gives us a decimal part, then that automatically makes it a rational number. But we can also divide a number and it can give us a whole number. So please be sure to always divide your numbers just to ensure that it will give you a fraction or a whole number. Look at the example below. Here's an example of how rational numbers are classified. Pay close attention to negatives and positives, whether they have fractions or decimals, because that is how we classify. Let's look at an example together. Let's classify the numbers below. A negative 9 divided by 3. If I go 9 divided by 3, that gives me 3, which is, and then make sure we carry our sign, so that would be a negative 3. And so in this case, it could be considered a integer. 3 and 76 hundredths. In this case, it has a decimal part, so we know it's going to be a rational number. Let's continue to look at some more examples. That 0 is just basically a placeholder, so it's basically just 48, which is a whole number. 117 will also be a whole number. A negative 5 and 33 hundredths. Again, it has a negative sign, but also make sure that you look at the back. It has decimal parts to it. So that automatically makes it a rational number. Per our last example that we had, if I go 8 divided by 5, I will have a whole number and decimal parts. So since we know that, it will automatically make it a rational number. A negative 254, an integer. 0, a whole number. And 2 and 1/5. Again, it has a fractional part, so that makes it a rational number. Let's look at another example. It can also be classified on a table such as this. So we know 5 is a whole number, but because it is a whole number, it can also be an integer and a rational. One-third is a fraction, so it'll just be considered a rational. A negative 10 divided by 2, that gives me a negative 5, which makes it an integer and a rational. 2 and 55 hundredths has a decimal part, so that automatically makes it a rational number. Negative 8.0, 0 is a placeholder, so that makes it an integer and a rational. And the last two, it has a fractional part, so that automatically makes it a rational number. And then 126 is a whole number, which would be a whole number, an integer, and a rational number. Try these independently.